Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create a legacy BIOS and MBR bootable Windows 11 USB drive using Command Prompt Windows 10 and Windows 11. We'll use Command Prompt to prepare the USB drive, configure the MBR partition style, make the drive bootable, and copy the Windows 11 installation files. The best part is that you don't need to use any third-party software such as Rufus or other USB creation tools. Everything can be done using the tools already available in Windows. This method is useful when you need a Windows 11 USB drive that can boot on a computer using legacy BIOS instead of UEFI. Before we start creating the bootable Windows 11 USB drive, let's first understand what legacy BIOS and MBR mean, and why they are commonly used together. Legacy BIOS is the traditional firmware interface used by older computers to initialize the hardware and start the operating system. It is the older firmware standard, while UEFI is the newer firmware standard used on most modern computers. MBR, or Master Boot Record, is a disk partitioning scheme. The MBR is located at the beginning of the drive and contains the partition table and boot information used by traditional or legacy BIOS systems. Legacy BIOS and MBR are related because a computer configured to boot in legacy BIOS mode typically expects the bootable drive to use the MBR partition style. So, in simple terms, legacy BIOS is the traditional firmware and boot method, while MBR is the disk partition style. First, plug your USB flash drive into your computer. Make sure the USB drive has at least 16 GB of storage capacity for the Windows 11 installation files. The USB drive will be formatted during this process, so all data currently stored on the USB drive will be erased. Make sure you back up any important files before continuing. Unlike PowerShell, Command Prompt does not have a built-in command to mount an ISO file directly. Therefore, before we prepare the USB drive, we need to mount the Windows 11 ISO using File Explorer. Open File Explorer and locate your Windows 11 ISO file. You can either double-click the ISO file to mount it, or right-click the ISO file and select Mount. Once mounted, Windows will create a virtual DVD drive and assign it a drive letter. Now that the Windows 11 ISO is mounted and the USB drive is connected, we can start preparing the USB drive. Go to the Start menu and type Command Prompt in the search box. Then select Run as Administrator to open Command Prompt with administrative privileges. If prompted by User Account Control, click Yes to allow it to run with administrative privileges. In the Command Prompt window, run the DiskPart utility. This launches the DiskPart command line environment, allowing you to manage disks, partitions, and volumes or configuring storage devices. The DiskPart utility is used to manage disk storage in Windows, including creating, deleting, formatting, and configuring partitions and volumes. Next, use the list command with the disk object type. This displays all storage disks currently connected to your computer, including their disk numbers, sizes, and status information. The list command is used to display available storage objects or information within the DiskPart utility. The disk object type represents the storage entity being managed, such as a disk, partition, or volume. Next, use the select command with the disk object type and specify the object identifier, 1. This selects disk 1 as the active target disk, allowing the following DiskPart commands to be applied to it. The select command is used to choose a specific storage object so that future commands will apply to it within the DiskPart utility. The disk object type represents the storage entity being managed, such as a disk, partition, or volume. The object identifier, 1, is a disk number assigned by Windows that represents a specific physical storage device, such as a USB drive. In this case, the specific physical storage device refers to the USB drive. Next, use the attributes command with the disk object type, apply the clear action, and specify the read-only attribute. This removes the read-only protection from the selected disk, allowing it to be modified. The attributes command is used to display or modify special properties assigned to a disk or volume within the DiskPart utility. The disk object type represents the storage entity being managed, such as a disk, partition, or volume. The clear action is used to remove or disable a specific attribute from the selected disk. The read-only attribute refers to the write protection setting assigned to the disk. Next, run the clean command. This deletes the partition table and volume structure from the selected disk, leaving it as unallocated space ready for creating new partitions and formatting. The clean command is used to remove all partition and volume information from the selected disk within the DiskPart utility. Next, use the convert command with the MBR partition style. This changes the selected disk to use the master boot record or MBR partition style, allowing legacy BIOS-based systems to properly detect and boot from the Windows 11 installation USB drive. The convert command is used to change the partition style of the selected disk within the DiskPart utility. The MBR partition style is a disk partitioning format that uses the master boot record structure to organize partitions and boot information on a storage device, commonly used by legacy BIOS-based systems. Next, use the create command with the partition object type and specify the primary partition type. This creates a new primary partition on the selected disk using the available unallocated disk space. The create command is used to generate a new storage object on the selected disk within the DiskPart utility. The partition object type refers to a logical section of a physical disk that can be created, managed, formatted, and used independently for storing data. The primary partition type is a disk partition that can be marked as active, allowing the BIOS to locate and start the operating system during the boot process. Next, use the format command with the quick option enabled, set the FS setting to NTFS, and set the label setting to Win11. This quickly formats the selected partition using the NTFS file system, and assigns it the volume label Win11. The format command is used to format the selected partition with a specified file system within the DiskPart utility. The quick option tells the format command to perform a fast format operation without scanning the entire partition for bad sectors. The FS option set to NTFS specifies that the selected partition will be formatted using the NTFS file system. The label option set to Win11 specifies that the formatted partition will be assigned the volume label name Win11. After the formatting process is completed, Windows will usually automatically assign an available drive letter to the first partition on the USB drive. Next, run the active command. This marks the selected partition as the active boot partition, allowing legacy BIOS-based systems to identify the partition containing the boot files required to start the Windows 11 installation process. The active command is used to mark the selected partition as the active boot partition on an MBR disk within the DiskPart utility. Next, use the list command with the volume object type. This displays all available volumes on the system, including their volume numbers, drive letters, file systems, sizes, and labels. From here, you need to carefully identify and remember the drive letters for both the USB partition labeled Win11 and the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive. These drive letters are important because you will use them later. The list command is used to display available storage objects or information within the DiskPart utility. The volume object type refers to a formatted storage area on a disk that contains a file system and can be accessed through a drive letter in Windows. Next, use the exit command. This exits the DiskPart utility safely and returns you to command prompt. The exit command is used to close the current DiskPart session and return to the standard command prompt environment. Next, use the set command to define a variable named USB drive and assign it the drive letter of the USB partition labeled Win11. This stores the drive letter of the USB partition labeled Win11 in the USB drive variable. The set command is used to create or modify environment variables. The USB drive variable set to D is used to store the USB partition labeled Win11. Next, use the set command to define a variable named ISO drive and assign it the drive letter of the mounted Windows 11 ISO image. This stores the drive letter of the mounted Windows 11 ISO image in the ISO drive variable. The set command is used to create or modify environment variables. The ISO drive variable set to E is used to store the drive letter of the mounted Windows 11 ISO image. Next, use the robocopy command with the source path set to the root directory of the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive stored in the ISO drive variable, set the destination path to the root directory of the USB partition labeled Win11 stored in the USB drive variable, and include the E option. This copies all Windows 11 installation files, folders, and directory structures from the mounted Windows 11 ISO image to the USB partition labeled Win11. The robocopy command is used to copy files, folders, and complete directory structures from one location to another. The source path is set to the root directory of the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive stored in the ISO drive variable. The destination path is set to the root directory of the USB drive stored in the USB drive variable. By including E option, the command copies all subdirectories, including empty ones, thereby preserving the complete folder structure. Wait for the copy operation to complete. This may take several minutes, depending on the speed of your USB drive. Do not disconnect the USB drive while the files are being copied. Once the copy process is complete, you can proceed to the next step. Next, use the bootsect.exe utility located in the boot folder of the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive stored in the ISO drive variable, and apply the NT60 boot code to update the boot sector on the USB drive stored in the USB drive variable, including the force option. This updates the USB drive with boot MGR compatible boot code, which rewrites the boot sector so the drive can properly start using the Windows Boot Manager in legacy BIOS-based systems. The bootsect.exe utility located in the boot folder of the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive stored in the ISO drive variable is used to update the boot sector of a target drive by applying the appropriate MBR boot code, enabling it to support Windows startup. By including the NT60 option, the bootsect.exe utility applies boot MGR compatible boot code used by Windows Vista and later, including Windows 11. The target path is set to the USB drive stored in the USB drive variable. By including the force option, the operation is forced to proceed even if the target volume is locked or currently in use. After completing the boot sector update, the next step is to safely dismount the Windows 11 ISO image. Go to File Explorer and select this PC. Under Devices and Drives, locate the mounted Windows 11 ISO drive. Right-click the drive and select Eject to safely unmount the ISO. After safely unmounting the Windows 11 ISO, you should also see your USB drive listed with the label Win11. At this point, the legacy BIOS and MBR bootable Windows 11 USB drive is complete and ready to use. And that's it. We have successfully created a legacy BIOS and MBR bootable Windows 11 USB drive using command prompt in Windows 10 or Windows 11, without using any third-party software. You can use it to install Windows 11, perform system recovery, or reinstall Windows 11 on compatible legacy BIOS systems. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more tutorials. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.